Test.
Oh.
Good evening, members of the public. Are encouraged to participate in meetings by, one, accessing the webcast at www.cityofclovis.com/agendas, or two, providing written comments at the same website, three, participating by phone or by forthcoming to the City Council meeting in person. I will call this meeting to order. Find my place. And Councilmember Bessenger will lead us in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is one of our special meetings where we join with our planning commissioners, and we'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Ashbeck? Here. Councilmember Bessenger? Here. Councilmember Monutoa?
You'll be a little late.
All right, currently absent. Councilmember Whalen?
Here.
Mayor Flores?
Here.
Commissioner Antuna? Here. Commissioner Bedstead?
Here.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Here.
Commissioner Hatcher? Here. And Chair Hinkle?
Here. On to public comments. This is the opportunity for the members of the public to address the City Council and the Planning Commission on any matters within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Anyone here, Chambers, wishing to address the council on any topic not on the agenda? Anyone on the web?
None.
Okay, we'll move forward. Ordinances and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, for the reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. Consent calendar. Items considered routine in nature are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will be all considered and voted upon in one vote as one item unless a council member requests individual consideration. Council member vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of the ordinance, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. We're going to do something a little special today because I'm conflicted on items 11 and 12. So first, I'll ask council members if they have any item that they'd like to pull from the consent calendar. Not including 11 and 12. So from 1 to 10, no. Anyone in the public wishing to pull an item from 1 to 10 on the consent calendar? Anyone on the web?
I'll make a motion for items 1 through 10 that we approve.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So I hear 4 ayes and 0 noes and 1 absent. And at this point, I will recuse myself from the from items 11 and 12. These are properties that are very close to my own home, and therefore it's a legal conflict of interest, and therefore I'll recuse myself. I'll still remain here, but will recuse myself from voting.
So the rules apply that the mayor read into the record, so since there was no public comment and no on the web comment, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items 11 and 12.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? You recuse. All right, motion carries.
Okay, now, I'm back. Now we adjourn to the joint meeting with the Clovis Planning Commission. And, first item of business, item 13, receive and file joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council. Staff Renee, Mathis, our Director of Planning and Development Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council, Commission Chair, and Planning Commissioners. It has been about 3 years since the last time we had a joint meeting, and believe it or not, we've been trying to convene this meeting before Luke retired. We actually started in October, but with COVID and spikes, we had to constantly push this meeting out. So we're happy to have everyone here tonight, finally. So tonight's item is a receive and file. The intent of the meeting is really to provide an update to the Council and the Planning Commissioners on a handful of items. I want to provide an update on the residential building permit activity that has happened this fiscal year to date. I'm also going to give a status, a very quick status on the development activity, the major development activity in Clovis. Then Mike Harrison's going to provide an update on our capital improvement program, touching on a few of our major projects. And then we want to focus our discussion really on 4 main topics, and that will be our general plan update, where we are, our vehicle miles traveled, the current status of our consultant, our Sb9, the Home Act, where we can now put up to 4 potential homes on what would have been just 1 single-family lot. And then we'll end with a request from the Building Industry Association for some feedback from both the City Council and the Planning Commissioners on compact single-family standards. Again, there's no formal action that we're seeking tonight, but we are looking for feedback. And if there's anything we haven't covered in my presentation or Mike, we want to hear from you and we want to provide you with that information. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. So as far as the residential permit activity for the year, I'm talking July 1 through last Friday, we have issued 500 residential permits. Predominantly, they're single-family, that's over about 400, and we have just under 100 multifamily permits. We anticipate hitting our historical average, just under it, of about 800 this year, and then our forecast shows that over the next 4 years, we will be at that historical average of about 800. We do have currently in the queue, meaning projects have submitted, they're with our building division, just under 300. Permits, predominantly, they're multifamily. We've got a multifamily project in Loma Vista. We're hoping that those permits get issued, and then we've got just about 50 single-family. Now, more could come in between now and the end of the year, but again, we're looking at hitting our 500. Major development activity. Okay, hold on. We're going to go kind of fast because there's a lot of ground to cover. So I'm going to start with Loma Vista. Our Fire Station 6, we're very close to having that station complete. We anticipate we will be done. I know if the chief's here, he's going to shake his head. Hopefully by the end of April, but for sure, but there he is, in May. We will have that project complete. In terms of construction, we'll go through punch list items, and then shortly thereafter, hopefully in June, we'll be having a ribbon cutting. Our Village Green, that's our large signature park in the Loma Vista area. We are very close to having the design of that complete. We anticipate being out to bid in May, so next month. The streets around the Village Green, that contract has been let. We ran into some issues and some complexity with the soil out in the field. That project's back up and moving. We anticipate that work being complete in June of 22. We also have a very large residential with a small component of commercial project in Loma Vista, and that's Home Place. You're probably familiar with that term. It's a 300-acre master planned community development. Dave and his group have been working for some time with the applicant. We're very close to having that master plan complete and ready to go to the Planning Commission. We anticipate that'll be in May and then before City Council in June. Again, the action that would be coming before you is approval of that master plan, the pre-zoning, the annexation, a master tentative, and then our beloved plan development permits for the exceptions they're looking for with the development standards. Continuing to more of the central area of Clovis, we've got our Fire Station 2. Our training facility is in production, meaning it's being constructed and completed off-site. They'll move on-site and have that training facility complete in the fall, September of '22, and then the current operations at Fire Station 2 would move in October. Then starting in November of '22, our existing Fire Station 2 will scrape it and start the rebuilding process. We anticipate that's about a one-year construction project. Now I'm going to shift us up to the Heritage Grove area. We've got a couple projects going on. One is the Heritage Development Company. That's really the project north of Shepherd. It's about an 880-acre specific plan that's being developed. You'll recall when I presented before you with the Clovis Unified School District, we were very early on in the environmental. We've made a little bit of progress. We've had a scoping meeting. We are working with the applicant on finalizing the specific plan elements and really tying down that project description. We are hoping once we get that specific plan tied down, we'll be in the environmental review for approximately 1 year. When we come back and bring that before Planning Commission and City Council for approval, the actions that will be coming before you will be not only approval of the environmental, there will be a general plan amendment, there will be some pre-zoning, there will be annexations, and then the tentative map and a PDP. Now, just south of that project, where Enzo's Table is located, the Heritage Grove is also, or they call it the Avenue at Heritage Grove. They have entitled. We've actually processed the entitlements on about 18 acres. That's a mixed-use development. So they're looking at developing about 13 acres for multifamily and 5 acres for retail and office space. So on the planning side, they're ready to go. Their plans are now going through the building and the engineering side. In talking with the families, I think applicant's the right word, they're consultants, they're very eager to see that get going. So I anticipate that they're going to want us to turn that around as quickly as possible. So that's another potentially 255 units for the multifamily that would be coming out of the ground there.
Can I just ask a question about that? Is the idea that that's supposed to be like a mirror image almost of the row?
It's going to complement the row, so it's going to look similar but different.
Okay.
There we go. So a lot of it's the same but different. It's different because it's in Clovis, it's a different development, so it's not going to have exactly the same design concepts, but it's going to look like it complements each other. It's a very attractive development. They've done a really good job working with their consultants on what I believe will be a really nice product when it comes out of the ground.
Good, thank you.
So those were the main points. I mean, I could jump into Landmark Square. We could talk about RT Park. John told me to keep this very high level, so I'm trying to be respectful of your time. If you're okay, I'd like to turn it over to Mike at this point. He's going to talk with you about capital projects, and then it'll come back to me, and I'll focus on our main 4 specific topics.
Thank you. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the capital projects, the ones that are of most interest, I think, to everyone and to me. We do have a very long list of projects that we're working on. So I'd like to start off with our Shaw Avenue project. We are finally under construction. The road was closed this morning and construction started this morning for one of our Measure C projects, our regional Measure C, which is going to construct Shaw out to McCall Avenue. The first phase of this project is going to be from DeWolf to Leonard. The reason for that is the segment to the west of that has some delays in right-of-way acquisition and some PGD coordination. So we kind of flipped it, and we're going to do this piece first and then move on to the next phase. So that project's going to be out there for about a year. At the front end of the project, the segment between Leonard and Highland is going to be closed for about 6 months because we have culvert work to do, some fairly major work to do in there, and it's most expedient to do it when the road is closed. But that will allow us to then open the road, and for the remainder of the project, we will have traffic coming through the project, and so that should work out pretty well. 6 months is fairly long, but when we were first looking at it, it was going to be a year, and we were able to coordinate it that way. I also want to mention that we're in design for what will be our final Measure C regional project for the current Measure C, and that's Herndon Avenue out to DeWolf Avenue. That will include the widening of Herndon Avenue to full width out to Locan. It will transition to the county road width as we get out to DeWolf. It will also include 2 traffic signals, one at Locan and one at DeWolf Avenue. Another project of interest is Nees Avenue between Minnewawa and Clovis Avenue. That project is adjacent to the Well Church, which is now under construction. We've been working closely with the team at the Well Church to try to deliver this project alongside of theirs. There have been some hiccups along the way, but we are now out to bid with the undergrounding part of the project. We ended up having to do the undergrounding of the overhead electric utilities first because of some Caltrans coordination issues. So we're doing that first and hope to follow right on the heels of that with the road construction project and the utilities. This is going to be an important coordination because the Well Church needs the sewer installed in Nees Avenue in order to get their sewer service. So we are going to work hard to make that happen. What will happen, though, is there will be some street work being done probably for the first 3 or 4 months of 2023, and that'll be after the church is open. So we'll have to work closely with the church on how the traffic is going to work and during the Sunday services. Renee already mentioned both of the fire stations and the village green, so I'll skip over those. Another project that has been awarded and will begin construction soon is the Auberry Road left turn lane. This will provide a left turn lane for the garbage trucks turning into the landfill, and will add to safety on that, what's become a very busy road. Some other projects that are in the works that I'd like to mention, we are working on locating a new well site in accordance with the master plan in the Heritage Grove area near Willow and Beeheimer. We're also working on acquiring the land needed for, we have 2 water reservoir sites up in the Heritage Grove. We are in the environmental stage right now, and we'll move right into land acquisition right after that so that we're ready to go when it's time to construct those. And we'll be putting some design money in this coming year's budget for your approval as well, so that we can get that design ready and move when we need to. And lastly, it's not a capital project, but it's something that we are working heavily on right now, and that is the major update on the development impact fees. We have had a couple of meetings with the industry already. The numbers we're seeing are pretty high based on the construction costs that we've been experiencing. So we'll be bringing that to council for consideration probably near the end of May, about the same time the budget's coming to you. And I think, unless you have any questions, I think that's all I have for the major projects, if there's any questions about something that you know about that I've skipped over, let me know.
I had a question that's probably going to have to be answered by Scott. Scott. So on that area where we're going to be digging another well, we're also going to have some ponding basins which are going to allow for some percolation. Are we also getting some water rights from any district that, because I think at some point, once we get across the Enterprise Canal, maybe there's another water district. And if so, if we're going to have some rights there, we'll be able to use that water in our surface water treatment plant. I guess what I'm really asking is, are we going to have a sustainable groundwater in that area of Heritage Grove?
Good evening, Council. So in response to that question, That's the Garfield Irrigation District. And we are in the process of trying to work with them to secure the water that would come with, well, the water doesn't run with the land in the Garfield District, but they do have water rights. So that'll be a process to get there. The conveyance agreement does state that the water that we're getting through the Kings River at this point in time is not to supplant the Garfield Irrigation District water supply. But again, as we move up and we go east and north of the enterprise, that's out of the FID, so we will need to work in an arrangement with Garfield or supplant that with additional firm water supply from the Fresno Irrigation District in some sort of amendment to the agreement that we currently have.
Is Garfield getting their water mostly from wells, or do they have access to the San Joaquin? Or
so they don't have access to the Kings. They have access to the Friant system. Friant system doesn't have much reliable water, if any at all. Like this year, it maybe gets down to 0%. So they're using wells, and then they have agreements that tie their water up for the next 10 years, where others are getting the water rights. So it's complicated. It'll be a very complex set of negotiations when we start in earnest working with them for water.
Thanks.
I have a really small question. On the two projects funded by Measure C, do they come with a sign that says funded by Measure C? And if they don't, can they?
They absolutely do, yes.
Excellent.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mike? All right, so we're going to go back now to the rest of the presentation. As part of the agenda, staff put together a report that's going to cover the remaining 4 items. There's a few attachments that will be helpful as I just really hit the high points of each of these four topics. In full disclosure, Dave and I had an opportunity, Dave Merchant, to meet with all of the planning commissioners over the past year to just get a feel for how things were going in the planning division, if there was additional information they were looking for. So part of how we came up with these topics was some of the feedback we received from the planning commissioners. So starting with our first focus topic of discussion, it's the general plan update. There's been a lot of interest in starting the next general plan update. A lot of you will recall our existing general plan was adopted in 2014, so it's not quite 10 years old, which is really kind of the trigger when you look at doing an update. But by starting the process now, it'll probably be about 10 years old once we have a new general plan that would be adopted. We've embarked on a 2-phased process to update our general plan. The first phase we hope will commence next month in May, and that's really to do an audit of the 2014 general plan to identify really the effectiveness of the current plan. If there's deficiencies, we want to identify and address any new state housing and transportation laws. We want to review the increases in densities, land use restrictions, any of our planning challenges. So we're going to do a comprehensive overview of what the update could include. We plan to return to council once we finish that first phase with a strategy for the actual update, and then at that point we would go out with an RFP to actually do the general plan update. I'm happy to say that this first phase we have gone out with an RFP. We've selected a firm. We will be back before council to seek your approval of that firm so we can start work at the first meeting in May. Now, we are being a little bit cautious on how long we think it'll take to finish that first phase. We anticipate it could be 4 to 6 months. Obviously, if we can get it done sooner, that would be everyone's goal. When we do finish the first phase and we get back before council with our recommendation, that will really dictate how long our general plan update will take. If it's a focused update, it could be shorter. If it's a comprehensive, it could be longer. Last go around, I want to say it was about 3 years to get our general plan updated, so we're anticipating it could be 2 to 3 years if we go with a full phased update. Okay, John, I was being optimistic. It won't be that long. So, it will not be that long. Well, I don't know. The last time I said, Sunnyside was gonna open up, look what happened. You know, the county got involved and we had a delay. All right, so that's our first topic. Our next one is Senate Bill 9. That's the California Home Act. So some of you may recall, on January of 22, this, bill went into effect, and it really applies to all single-family residential zone districts where it allows ministerial approval for qualifying projects, and these projects fall into one of two categories. You have a single-family residential lot where you either have one home on it and you want to add a second, you get to do that by right, or you have a single-family lot that has no homes on it and you want to come in and you can just ministerially put two homes if you meet this qualifying criteria. The second category is where you've got a single-family lot and you want to subdivide it. You want to split it in half, and what was before allowing one home could now potentially allow up to 4 homes because you've split the lot and you've got 2 homes on each lot. So I want to just hit the high points of projects that fall into one of these two categories and what needs to be met. I do want to preface that there is criteria, so they're not all just going to get approved. You do have to meet certain milestones. So under just constructing 2 units on one existing single-family lot, again, that would be 2 homes where before it was just 1 home on a lot. So it's going to be 1 home that's existing and a new home added, or 2 brand-new homes. There are some setback requirements where the state allows 4-foot setbacks. I know we've had a lot of discussion on setbacks, but that's allowed under this law. You could go down, but you cannot require going up. The standards cannot physically prevent the construction of 2 800-square-foot units on a lot if you meet all of the criteria, and then parking is required. You must have at least 1 parking stall per unit. If you're going to subdivide one single-family residential lot into 2 lots, whereby you would have potentially 4 homes, the criteria is the lots must be at least 2,400 square feet, so each lot, you know, has to be at least 1,200 square feet. You can't subdivide previously subdivided lots under this bill, Sb9, and then adjacent parcels can only be divided via Sb9 if owners are independent. So you can't have multiple lots next to each other that are owned by one person and then trying to subdivide each of those lots under Sb9. So staff has been working really closely with Scott and his team, Scott Cross, to really understand the implementation of the Sb9. We are reading through and trying to interpret and clarify this statute because there's some provisions in there that we want to make sure that we get right. We're in the process of developing an Sb9 checklist, which would list all of the minimum standards and criteria as these requests come to us to either build a second home on a lot or to split a lot. We anticipate that criteria will be complete later this month or early May. Then we'll look at an update to the development code with Sb9 objective standards. If we find that that would be beneficial, we're looking at having that completed this summer or maybe the fall of 22, and then potentially creating an Sb9 fee for the lot splits, because right now they would fall under our current fee structure. So what kind of interest has the city received? So we have had a handful of interest, less than a half a dozen, that have called, have inquired what the criteria would be. We've encouraged them to go through our development review committee process where we could really evaluate. We have 1 actual application in for downtown Clovis where they're looking at taking an existing lot and splitting it. So we're running them through that process, and that's kind of the test case for us also in creating the minimum checklist and the standards. So as more develops, I'll be sure to include some information in a Friday report, but that's kind of where we stand right now. I know when we presented back in October, there were questions from the council on how many lots are we looking at, residential lots, that this could apply. The city doesn't have any more recent information than what the, I believe it was the Turner Center that provided some statistics. And for Clovis, they indicated there were about 1,200 lots that could potentially qualify under this criteria for developers or an owner to come in and either put a second lot on a single-family lot or to split it. So we'll continue to keep you apprised as the interest increases, if it does, but right now it just seems like we've got a couple people, but really only one application. No, now it's fine.
Renee, are there any public noticing requirements on the neighbors to the either side if this is happening in their neighborhood or next door to them?
No.
Zero.
No. I'm looking at Dave. No. Yeah.
Okay. And we can't impose that.
No, it's ministerial. So as long as they meet all of the criteria, they basically run through a checklist, and then they would be going to building to get their permits issued, you know, if they were just to build a second. And then if they wanted to go through the process of doing a lot split, they'd work through, you know, our engineering division. But there is no formal noticing requirement.
And we can't ask them to, like we do with home businesses, we can't say, gee, it'd be great if you could let your neighbors know this is gonna be 8 houses here or something like that.
I'll defer to Scott. I think we can ask them to, notice, but it's at their discretion.
Yeah, she's right. We can certainly ask, but we can't require. And if they say, thanks for the input, but we're not gonna, as the applicant, they're not gonna do it, we can't force them to do it. We can't give them a permit, before they actually do any notice. The question, rezone? No, it already.
We'll open it to the public after the presentation. My question is, can someone have an older house on a lot, raise it, and then make room for two homes?
The short answer is yes, if certain criteria is met, and that's, again, what we're working with Scott's office on. So, some of the finer points, it depends on if it has a tenant in there, if it has some kind of deed restrictions on there as far as rent control. So all that needs to be evaluated before we could indicate whether or not an existing structure could be scraped, or if a small portion of it could be demolished, and then they could do some renovation work to it.
I have a question. Regarding the, you said 4-foot setback, we can't make them go more. What about height requirements? Can they put a 2-story unit 4 foot from the fence by ministerial right?
So I'm gonna start, and then I'm gonna ask Dave to jump in. So most of the development standards that I have seen that are associated with Sb9 are the side and the rear yard setbacks. When you look at the front yard setbacks, it's going to defer to the zone district and what is required. So I believe the same height requirements would apply to that situation.
Believe. We're
Yeah,
still
I
fleshing that
wanted
out.
Dave to confirm that.
Okay.
He said yes.
Cal Cities is concerned about a bill that's in committee. Okay, I don't have the bill number, or I do tell you, I'm sorry. But there's 200 bills in committee. They think 200 of them will actually come out and affect development. But one of the bills, Sb9 which is in committee, and they are watching this very closely, this will allow 25-foot height. So it'll go from our 16 we have now to 25 feet.
So we can look into that. I'm not familiar with that bill, but we can follow it.
Yeah, I would keep your eye on it.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen out of Sacramento. But anyway.
Renee, I know I'm going to be preaching to the choir here, but when our legislature is working up Sb9 and all these ancillary ABs and SBs, has anyone from Sacramento contacted our city or any of the other cities in the Central Valley to see how their changes might impact us?
I was not contacted, and I can confirm that no one else, at least Dave and I from Planning and Development Services, were not. I would defer to John to see if anyone from admin
I see John shaking his head, so I presume no. So this is all unilaterally imposed on Clovis, Fresno, and all the Central Valley towns by Sacramento then, am I correct?
It's partisan. It's one party doing this to everyone else, and there's another party that's trying to mitigate, but they're outnumbered.
And Mike, just to answer you, I sit on the Housing and Economic Development Committee, so we do write letters on behalf of Cal Cities, and we oppose this vehemently, and it didn't change the legislature's mind. It was overwhelming. A lot of the cities were against it. So that went to all the legislatures, and so we are involved in that sense. But with regards to our local electeds coming to us, even I have, and I don't know if Andy has sat in those meetings all last year when this came through as well. So we've been involved in that sense only with Cal Cities. Yeah, and we will continue to, your bill down and continue to look at that as that comes before our committee.
Yeah, and again, I want to thank the City Council and the City of Clovis for allowing me to go to the Planners Commission, or Academy again. It is such a great opportunity to learn things about what's going on in California. I learn so much every time I go up there, and again, this came from that meeting, and I think these, and if you want, I can give you this list. These are things, that we need to be concerned about. If Cal Cities is concerned, maybe we ought to look at.
Yeah. Renee, on Sb9 with regards to the 2 homes of 4, is that only to current homes? How about a new development in which it's one owner and they want to say right now it's zone 100 homes? Can they do 400 and apply all that, or only on one lot out of the 400? Out of the 100.
Not have multiple lots next to each other by one owner and then think you could split each of those lots. So you can't, I can't own 2 lots next to each other and say, I'm going to come in and I want to split both of those lots, and what would have been only 2 homes, now I get 8 homes. I don't get to do that.
So back to the 100-unit development. So that developer can only split one lot out of that 100-unit. So it can do one every 100, so 50?
So I want to start, and I think I'm going to have Scott jump in. It's my understanding, I think we'd have to really look at it because that might get around what the intent of Sb9 was. I guess technically if you read the Sb9 statute, they can't be adjacent to each other, so maybe it could be every other lot that they could split, and then what would be 1 home could now be 4, but I want Scott to confirm that.
Yeah, the statute does say adjacent, so, but it doesn't define what adjacent means. So we would assume that it means next door, but does that mean across the street as adjacent, or, catty corner or kitty corner, whatever you want to call it? It's not clear, but I think it's clear that you couldn't have one applicant, and again, it's an applicant that's coming in, apply basically to, lot split an entire street, basically, the same person. Or, I think in your example, a developer coming in at the outset and wanting to basically further lot split 100 lots into 200 lot subdivision. Because again, that's one applicant, so you couldn't do it on adjacent properties.
Okay. But my concern is, if they do it, how prepared are we regarding infrastructure? Because, we do these EIRs, we're planning for single-family, multifamily, and as new development happens, and if they can do half, that's still even more impact on infrastructure than we ever anticipated. And so, one is, I think they're exempt from CEQA when they do this, and exempt also from SGMA, which is sort of, disturbing to jurisdictions. But because of that, then how do we move forward in our studies as we do the general plan update to anticipate going, here's a new development, if it comes down that they can do half, because they're doing every other home, how do we make infrastructure be ready for that instead of not be ready enough where, you know, things start exploding or not having enough pressure, all that kind of stuff? Just to think forward.
But within the spirit of this legislation is to reclaim land in large lots in older neighborhoods with established infrastructure, but it still tax that older infrastructure that wasn't ever built for now 2 homes in 1 lot. But it was built to reclaim land and give landowners or property owners that option to have that secondary home on that property. So, but will there be abuses? Of course, you know.
Renee, if I could, I do want to just, I guess, add to Vong's question to maybe put you a little bit at ease. With the lot split, again, there's 2 issues at play with SB9. One is you've got an existing parcel and you want to put a second unit on. And then the second aspect of it is the urban lot split is what they call it. 1 lot, dividing it into 2, and then potentially developing 2 units on each of those 2 new lots now. The second one, the lot split, the urban lot split, requires the applicant, and again, that's one of the things we're working through, is to define who the applicant is. The applicant has to sign an affidavit, basically a declaration under oath, saying that they intend to occupy one of the resulting units for at least 3 years. So even in your example, again, an applicant can presumably only live in one as his or her primary residence. So if an applicant signs that affidavit, that would be on staff, I guess. If we get a subsequent applicant or a subsequent application from the same applicant, how are you going to, within that 3-year period, sign that affidavit when you've already signed an affidavit over here? So there's a little, there are some guardrails, I'll use that term, guardrails in the law. Maybe not as much as everyone around this table would like to see, but there are some guardrails that I think would prevent, you know, the widespread abuse that you might be worried about.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And again, you know, we're looking at what the Turner Center put out. When they throw a number out like 1,200, I would like to think that it's not going to be applied across the board in these major developments. But as we continue to work on these checklists and informational standards, other cities around the state, they're coming up with their same checklist. We're looking at what they're developing, how they're interpreting this statute, and then we're coming up with our plan as how to best advise the community as they come forward. Now, this has been in effect since July, and again, we have 1 application and less than 6 that have really come forward with an interest. So moving on, the next item is our vehicle miles traveled update, and I really wanted to just focus on an update for the contract with Kittleson. But before I jump into that contract, I wanted to take just a few minutes to talk about VMT. So you may recall in July of 2020, the metric under CEQA to evaluate traffic impacts, it changed from congestion and delays to the average distance traveled. So in order to be ready in July when that new metric went into effect, the city hired Kittleson well before that to work on developing some VMT guidelines so that development could continue to move forward and properly assess their traffic impacts under VMT. So in July of 2020, when this new metric went into effect, we were also back before you with our draft VMT guidelines. So those guidelines were being used in July. We noticed that over the next handful of months, developers that were utilizing our interim guidelines, their projects weren't falling below that regional average, and so their projects were being tripped into having to do these large environmental impact studies to address traffic. So in April of 21, staff amended Kittleson's contract to prepare a focused environmental impact report as a supplement to the city's 2014 general plan EIR to address VMT. Really, the intent of this additional work with Kittleson was to increase the streamlining of the traffic analysis at the project level and to reduce the need for them to have to prepare these project-specific EIRs when it came to VMT impacts. So this work is still underway. We've been working with Kittleson, and I have to say it's not because of a delay on their part, but it's new. I mean, everyone's trying to figure out VMT and how to properly address these impacts and address general plans and how projects can continue to move forward. So at this point, we anticipate having some documents out for public review in May to the development community on these new maps of what projects would look like if they fall under our updated general plan and the circulation element based on what Kittleson's doing. We anticipate that all of Kittleson's work will be complete this summer, and that will be back to present before council a revised circulation element and adoption of the focused DIR, really addressing the VMT. We'll also be back with a final version of our VMT implementation guidelines at that time. And once again, when we come back and council reviews all these documents, and if the decision is to approve them, it's going to be to assist projects so that they are, any project that's consistent with the general plan, they should be able to tier off of our focused EIRs. So these individual VMT EIRs or impacts would no longer be needed. Now, if a project comes in and they're requesting a general plan amendment, they're not consistent with our general plan, and under our VMT guidelines, they cannot get below that regional average, then they will have to do some additional studies. But any project that is consistent with our general plan, they'll be able to tier off of the document, which was really our intent. That's the whole reason we contracted. Now, what we haven't done is contract with them on what a VMT mitigation fee might look like. There has been some interest from the industry on what a fee could look like. We are having discussions with Kittleson on potentially amending their contract again to address that. We're just really early in that process. So I attached to the staff report a fact sheet that we had put together for the building industry because I really wanted to make sure we all stayed on the same page in terms of what we were going to get out of the efforts with Kittleson, our original and the amendment. So the fact sheet's attached, and I think it really does kind of cover what the product is going to look like when we come back to you this summer. The last item that I want to talk about is a request that came from the Building Industry Association, and its interest in compact single-family residential development standards. I know Mike Prandini is here, and he may want to speak on behalf of the industry.
Before you move to that one with regards to VMT, are there any other jurisdictions that have completed further than we have where we're at, where it's already in place, they did their, I know we went the EIR route, but where we can bounce and look at ideas and how it's gone?
Yeah, so I know the city of Fresno is also moving forward. I'm going to ask Dave because he's had a conversation with their development team in terms of where they are in their process and when they're going to have their documents completed.
I think the answer is probably that there's not a lot of progress beyond where we are by the majority of cities that we are aware of. We've been looking to see if there are best practices out in terms of mitigation, including mitigation fees or mitigation banks. That information has been slow to generate in the industry. As Renee pointed to, and the staff report discusses a little bit, mitigation fees may be an important part of the long-term answer, but we have really had a difficult time finding examples, even very recent examples, where those fees are coming into play. I think cities like us are starting to evaluate them now. We're not getting a great response from our consulting team on the feasibility of implementing or designing and implementing a fee program right off the bat. I think there's a lot of willingness to try, but it's so new, across the state that there's not a resource of examples that we can follow. So I think there are some tools that are being looked at in terms of Fresno, for instance, drafted, hasn't come out, it's kind of gotten tied up, but they put together what they're calling a VMT calculator or mitigation calculator, where they're looking at how potentially some design features could be incorporated into projects that have the potential to reduce VMT. That's gotten stalled, so I'm not sure exactly if they are continuing to work on it, but that's the kind of thing that we would look at and see, okay, are there best practices that are sticking? That's something that we should look at pulling into our inventory.
I recall that in the beginning there was more of a regional, the county was sort of working together with all the jurisdictions to sort of determine VMT. I forgot that thing is called, the number, the score. And so are they still wanting to be involved, or are they more hands-off now and allowing local jurisdictions to do what they think is best with VMT?
I kind of think the answer to that question is yes, they're still involved. COG, for instance, is looking at a regional fee analysis. I'm not sure that it will result in the adoption of an actual regional mitigation fee, but they're continuing to look at it. But I also know that the cities individually are continuing to do their own thing, if you will.
So the delay of finally having something, a program for BMT, won't that eventually stop development and entitled land won't be available? Or am I missing something? As far as the...
Right.
So how do we deal with it now?
So we have our interim VMT guidelines, and because we haven't gone through and adopted an update to our general plan, right now if projects can't get below that regional threshold, I think it's a 13% reduction, then they're tripped into doing these more extensive environmental reviews. So a lot of projects, you have seen them slow down. They either screen out because they meet certain criteria, or they're already projects that are large enough that are doing environmental reviews. Similar to like the Heritage Development Company up north. I mean, that's a very large EIR. Environmental is being reviewed. As part of that process, we've got a couple other projects. I know you're familiar when I say the Spenceley piece of property off of Shepherd and Sunnyside. That's another project that's going through an environmental review. They'll address VMT because that project was already going to do that level of study. But some other developers or projects they are kind of waiting until we update our general plan and our circulation elements so they can tier off of that. Now, again, we're focusing very specifically on traffic. If their project tripped in another element, you know, something that they couldn't mitigate, let's say biological, air, cultural, something, they would be back at the table having to do an EIR. But for traffic, we're trying to streamline by working with Kittleson and updating our general plan and circulation element. I do want to add, at the last BIA meeting, there was, might have been the last, if not the one before it, where we provided this fact sheet. There was discussion about other communities and what they were doing. So part of my research is to contact each of the cities within the county and to really find out, what are you doing? How far along are you? So I will report back once I'm finished with that research, just to kind of see what the smaller cities are doing. A lot of them fall under what COG produces because they don't have the resources. I mean, Fresno, Clovis, they're a little bit different. But I want to know what the smaller cities are doing. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I wanted to get into our last topic, which is the compact single-family residential development. So as part of the staff report, there's a few attachments that really outline what the building industry is seeking. And tonight they're really looking for feedback from the City Council and the Planning Commission to consider establishing objective standards for lots that are less than 4,500 square feet. They're actually looking at parcel sizes at about 1,800 square feet, and we're referring to this as the compact single-family residential. So I want to break up my high-level overview into a couple parts. I want to talk about our current process, how we process these types of projects now, what the BIA's request is, and then the feedback that they're looking for. So under our current process right now, under the municipal code, compact single-family projects, they're evaluated through that plan development review or permit process, the PDP. PDPs allow the developer in the city to kind of customize, well, the developer to customize their standards for the approval of their project on a project-by-project basis. So they may come to us and want a reduction in a particular standard, lot coverage, setbacks, you know, you name it, you've seen it. So as part of that process, the PDP, there's a fee that's associated with processing that permit, and there's additional time to get your project approved. It adds anywhere from 1 to 2 months processing time to the required tentative subdivision map. Applicants, they're required to work with us, staff, and the decision makers to really define what those amenities are going to be for their project. And the amenities are really commensurate with the reduction in the standards that they're looking for. If they're looking for a lot of reduction, then the amenities tend to be a lot larger. The amenities that, again, they would enhance the project's benefit to the public, and that amenity is in exchange for the flexibility and the standards. So that's how we currently process these types of projects through. The BIA is requesting we codify a development criteria and establish standards for these compact single-family developments, and that would potentially streamline for them their development process, making their costs more predictable on the front end, which they're looking for, and it would reduce some time. Now, go back with me to last fall. The Planning Division brought before Council's consideration objective standards for our single-family residential. And so we had the R1MD. You'll probably remember we brought that back a couple of times. And, you know, Council considered the objective standards for 4,500 square foot lots. And you expressed, and what we heard was there was a desire to really retain the current PDP process, where these unique situations were coming up, and we encountered these constraints on the smaller lots. And the discussion was, we like the PDP process because on a project-by-project basis, we can really evaluate what the developer is looking for, and we can make sure that the amenities are commensurate. So the PDP process really provided us the flexibility to approve those development standards on the smaller lots and other unique situations as part of the overall consideration of the project. And that also included the design features and the amenities. So again, circling back, what the industry is interested in tonight is hearing feedback from the council and the commission. Is there an interest in them moving forward and establishing or requesting initiation to establish these new objective standards for the compact single-family developments? The industry, as you'll see in your attachments, they have included a schedule of amenities that they're proposing we could have approved as part of these new standards. So again, if I remember offhand, if you're less than 50 lots, there's a table of amenities that would go with the project. If you're over 50 lots, those amenities would, again, increase. I don't want to speak too much on behalf of the industry because I know Mike is here and he will do that. But again, they're really looking for your feedback and interest. If they were to move and come forward, what would, you'd be looking for. So with that, that is staff's presentation on a very high overview on our permit activity, our major development, our capital projects, and then these focused areas. We want to make sure that we have given you good updated information. If there's something we've missed, we'll do our best to answer your questions. Both, Mike, Dave, and I are here to give you everything you're looking for. Or
any questions on the objective standards for the compact single family?
On chart attachment 3, has staff, what is staff's position? Because, we have what the BIA proposed, existing R1, R2, R1MD, and the one that we rejected. So I didn't hear the position of staff regarding BIA's position, or did you want BIA to present first and then have staff give their recommendation?
No, I'm going to go ahead and take a shot. So, the attachment 3 is a table that we put together to show what the BIA was, proposing and what our existing standards are for the R2 and then the R1MD. At this point, staff has indicated at BIA meetings that we would not be in support of a reduction or coming with an objective standards, and that was solely based on the feedback we had received from council when we came forward with these objective standards. It was very clear that the council liked having the ability to weigh in on projects, really look at the amenities and evaluate what a project would be incorporating with the reduction in the standards. So we felt like there was a process in place, it was working well, it did add a little bit of time and there was a cost to it, but in exchange for that, we really got to weigh in and look and negotiate, you know, with the team to bring something that we felt met the vision and what council would be looking for. So at this point, our position has been, we really weren't in support based on the past direction.
The difference is, right now, they can't build on an 1,800 square foot lot. We don't have any capacity for that. So we're still at the 4,500 square foot lot as the smallest.
So the way that they would be able to get down to these smaller compact developments is to go through the PDP process. So they would have to come in and work through that process to get to what they're requesting as far as an exception.
I don't have any questions on it, but I have a comment on it, but I'll wait until Mike talks.
I'm trying to figure out the distinction between the October 13th, 2021 letter and then the December 13th, 2021 letter. It does appear as though they just have cut out maybe that first part, which talked about lot and building dimensions. Is that a fair characterization of the distinction between the two?
Yes. To me, the December letter is just a more formal request to be on the agenda before the joint meeting at the point in time that the meeting was going to be established.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Renee, I wanted to follow up on just, not just based upon what council has expressed, but based upon the facts of just what the BIA is proposing. I mean, if we expressed that it was okay, then staff would be okay with, you know, sort of the setbacks they're saying, because this is even less than what you were proposing to us, yet your position is more, well, we won't entertain it because council doesn't like it, but I would like more objective, as in, oh, we can't have 10 by 16, you know, garage size, you know, that's never happened in Clovis, you know, how can you go so much lower than what we already proposed? You know, more nuts and bolts of it, other than council didn't like what we have already, so even if you propose anything, we're not gonna support it. I mean, just looking at what's here, I mean, is that something in which, yeah, Clovis is ready for that. You know, if council ever favors, we as a development team would go, this is something in which a product in which staff would be able to support, have, and see in the city of Clovis, or, you know, this is way too small, or these setbacks are just not something in which this community and this planning staff would ever be able to support.
So I do know that the planning division really does like having the opportunity to work with developers when they ask for these exceptions, really looking at what kind of amenities could improve that development, improve that area. This really takes that ability to do that away. It puts together a table that says, hey, if you're 50 units or less, these are the amenities you're going to get. So we really lose that ability to weigh in and work with the developer on doing something kind of unique in that area. It has worked in the past over the years through, you know, the transition of a PUD, PRD, PDP, you know, they're all kind of, to me, the same. They had just different names. But it became really clear also, even though in the past, when staff came to the council with the BIA's request for like changes to the proposed R1MD, you had seen that come before council quite a bit with those types of design exceptions, you know, development standards. Very commonly, they were being approved, but yet council even responded back at that time saying, no, we like our process and we like the ability to weigh in. So it further just substantiated, you know, what staff does with the development community on really trying to work on getting that best product out of the ground. It's hard to say everything's going to be the same because each of these projects are a little bit different, and there could be, you know, improvements to a trail, to a park, to the entry of a development, to the development itself, and we don't want to lose that opportunity to do something really great. And I'll really defer kind of to Dave. I know he has been, he has spent more time, and I mean, if he has more to add, I'd like to hear it.
We haven't, at this point, completed a substantive review of the proposed development standards. As Renee indicated, you know, we have a good tradition of collaboration on these kinds of projects that are proposing compact single-family development. And I can speak for staff, and I'm guessing I can at least speak to the sentiment of the development community, where at the council's direction, we'd be happy to engage in that discussion and come back with a set of compact standards if the council desires that. But if you're comfortable with the existing PDP process to handle unique situations like these smaller lots, then it effectively sort of makes that process moot, and you know, we won't go through the process of developing standards.
I wanted to, if I may, I wanted to make sure I was understanding attachment 3. So, I understand, on the left, column, there's just a description, and then, of the particular area of concern. And then your, next column is the BIA proposed compact, is it square footage standards, SF? Is that single family standards? And then existing R2 standards. I'm presuming that those are side by side because the compact single-family standards, is that going to be under our R2 standards, or are we asking, or is the BIA asking for a whole new kind of, I'll call it a zoning designation of compact? Is that what they're asking for? Is that your understanding, David?
Yeah, if we ended up getting direction to bring back compact standards, we would propose the adoption of a new zone district.
Okay.
And that could be called something like R1 HD or R1 Compact or something like that. But
okay.
It would require a new district.
And then column 3 is our existing medium density for under the R1, and then there was a request of the council to kind of become even more condensed in our R1MD standards, and that was rejected, and that's what's reflected in that other column, that last column. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the question really for us, and maybe I can just wait until Mike comes up there, but it sounds like Mike is asking for a whole new, or the BIA is asking for a whole new zone district under this compact single family. Is that fair characterization of your understanding, at least, David?
It is, and I think really the question comes down to, you know, a very basic philosophy. Do we want a set of objective standards for compact single-family development, or do we want to use the PDP process? Both work. Both. Certainly, the PDP process has worked, and we could see that in terms of application of compact standards, that would work. Would it work as well in terms of delivering the product that we are looking for as a community? I think that's yet to be seen, but we would certainly do our best to develop standards that would bring that about. But that's really the philosophy question. Objective compact standards or the PDP, and we're prepared to go in either direction.
And if we have the objective standards, then it sounds like that's a process that's going to go a lot more smoothly, kind of more at the ministerial level as opposed to something that gets brought back to us through a PDP process, at least maybe to the Planning Commission. And then, if I recall correctly, I can only speak for myself, but maybe other council members felt the same way. The real challenge was, well, I guess there were challenges on both sides. You know, do we really want to have this kind of density in the city of Clovis? And then secondly, if we are going to have this kind of density, what are the amenities? And if it's like a park bench, we're probably like, no way. But if it's like some significant green space to make up for the loss of backyard or green, space for each lot, then maybe. And that's where the challenge, at least from my perspective, seems to come from is, so it sounds like I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I at least wanted to broadcast to Mike when he gets up there that those are at least some of my concerns.
John?
Well, Dave and Renee, I was just going to clarify, it's going to be that, as proposed here, staff does not support the BIA proposed single-family standards. Compact.
Yeah, so the discussion, up to this point, and the industry has come back to us and prepared these letters outlining what they're requesting, and staff has said, we have a process, and you get to where you want to be at the end of the day. It just takes a little bit longer. There's a little bit of time, but we've got a lot of involvement. We get to review what you're requesting. We get to help with the amenities, and it comes back before the council to really review and approve. If we were to develop these compact standards, then as long as, you know, they met the standards, they wouldn't be coming before you with amenities. It would be pulled off of this table. So it would be just what you're seeing right here, as an example. I mean, well, and this, and you choose that. Right, but you would not have a say. Right. So again, I just want to maybe read to you what they're proposing. So
before you jump into the second part of it, I wanted to confirm that they what they're proposing here is that staff prefers the PDP process.
We like the PDP process. We think it works, and it provides us the opportunity to weigh in. The industry does have a case. I mean, if we were to develop these compact standards, it would help streamline. They would know their costs on the front end. You know, things would move quicker for them. So I think time and money was definitely a consideration, and I know Mike can go into that when he speaks. But again, on part of attachment, I believe it's the December 13th letter from the industry, they're saying that for any of these high density or compact developments of at least 50 units, they'd have a minimum of 2,500 square feet, and they would have one improvement selected from a list. So they would get to pick if it's one trash can, one tot lot, at least 15 by 15 in size, a shade structure, an arbor, or an exercise course with at least 4 elements. But they would be picking that. We would not have that discretion. And then if the number of units increase, then you add a second amenity.
I have one last. When the proposal came before us, was that based upon sort of compact developments that has come through the PDB process in which these standards were sort of what we have been approving? Because I don't remember that meeting too well. I know we rejected it, but was it based upon where we've got 50 applications that we approved through the PDP process, and this is what we were seeing, and so that's why staff was comfortable representing, or are these sort of just...
Again, I'm going to speak for Dave. Sorry, Dave. It was. Okay. So the industry had come before us with their recommendation on the proposals for the R1MD, and a lot of what they were requesting was based on past projects that had been approved through the PDP process. So it wasn't as if something was coming to you that was completely out of left field. Now, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I think the garage dimensions, the industry had requested something, and staff was not recommending that particular side. But everything else, you know, staff had reviewed, brought before council, and it had been approved. But again, the sentiment of the council was, we like our process, and it gives us the opportunity to weigh in.
If I may. So, but we've had a morphing then of the conversation from the medium density conversation that we had for objective standards, now to this whole new zone district, which is compact. And it feels as though they got the no on the medium density, and it's like, now they want to have the same conversation, but for a whole new zone district, and it just, and I haven't made a decision, but it sure sounds like there's a little bit of tone deafness going on the part of the BIA. I guess I set the stage for Mike to correct me.
Anyone else want to comment on the whole presentation or parts of it? Not?
Just generally, I think the general plan is important. It cannot take 5 years. The assumptions you make in year one of a 5-year process are not even relevant at year 5, which then is 10 years from there. So that's really like off the table. So whatever that's required, I would encourage that. And yes, I think we should start now. I am interested, maybe not now, but at some point, I'd like to know where we are on the sphere. I know we've talked over the last few months about sphere bigger, smaller. I know we looked at some of the Wilson projects, didn't want to go that big. So I would like an update on the sphere, not necessarily right now, but I'm curious about where that is. So I just wanted to comment on that. And I would just say everything. This compact standard thing, in my mind, it's not a compact development standard. It's what kind of place do you want to live? I do not want to live in a place with 1,800 square foot lots and a trash can. Like, that offends me at every level for the city of Clovis. Sorry, Mike. I didn't telegraph, I just said it right there for you. But I think that's the question before us. What kind of place are we gonna leave 50 years from? 50 years from, that neighborhood is not gonna be worth living in. Sorry. So we gotta have a long conversation about what that is going to be like, because when we start saying, I'd like to say if they wanna give us all the things on A, B, C, D, E, and then an amenity, I'm in, right? Like, that's different, but picking one of those things and saying it's a trash can is just like, too much. So, I don't know, it's just.
On the trail.
It's just,
That's what it
Mr.
was.
Prandini, you have your work cut out for you. We hear the objective standards, I get that, but we cannot, as a community, give up whatever we think in 50 years. I can't get there. I cannot, in good conscience. I was asking Drew, how big is this? The tot lot is about the size of this table. What? That's like 1 tot per lot. Like, that isn't even a thing. So I don't know. I just need some help, because I cannot imagine a community. I think I said this then. I've recently walked a few precincts in our last campaign, and some of those new neighborhoods that we said were good and the lots are pretty small and there's no place to park, they're horrible. Like, they're horrible and they're only 3 years old. So I am animated about this, so no. Not opposed to I get the objective standards, but we cannot give away density for a trash can. Just cannot do it.
I will add, so the last general plan amendment, I think part of the reason it took 5 years is there was some funding constraints, and so money was a little bit difficult. We don't have that problem. We hear you. We've heard the same thing from the industry. As soon as we let this first phase, it's going to be the balls rolling. I think Dave had mentioned, and I'm sorry if I did not, I know I haven't tonight. So Ricky, our deputy city planner, is going to be taking the lead on our general plan update. And he'll be working with staff and obviously our consultants. So we've got a great team, and our focus will be on getting this phase 1 completed as quickly as possible. If that can get done within 6 months, that's definitely our goal. And then if we're very clear on our strategy for what the update looks like, we want it to hit the ground running.
Thank you.
Do you have a question or no?
No.
At this point, I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public here present wishing to comment on any portion of the whole report, the general plan, update, Sb9, we heard about, the VMTs, and we also heard about the compact single-family objective standards.
Oh, come on, Mike, you're so excited about this.
Good evening, members of the council and planning commissioners. Mike Prandini, representing the Building Industry Associations. Just to a point on these objective standards, these were submitted subsequent to your denial of the staff's recommendation for R1 medium density. At the time, I believe I mentioned that the industry was also interested in creating a higher density zone, because you don't have one. You don't have a high density. You'd have to go to the R2 zone, which is a whole different ballgame. And the industry is looking at developing the standards to speed up the process, because although staff has indicated it's a 1 to 2 month delay from the information, the feedback I'm getting from my builders whenever they go through this process, it can be up to 6 months, because you go forward, get kickbacks, go forward, get kickback. And there's no certainty that you're going to get what you're trying to design. And when you start the process, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out through engineering and planning and architectural design of how it will all fit together with whatever you're proposing. And if you go through the process to the planning commission, then onto the city council, and then get turned down, you've wasted several $100,000. And that just increases the cost of development. So we're proposing, these are proposals. They're not hard requests, they're proposals. We had to have some place to start. So we threw out some stuff to start. Said, okay, what is usually required in these various developments that these other developers are doing in other locations? And we just started throwing some requirements together and some amenities together in order to give you some idea of what we're talking about, so that you would give the staff direction to come back and develop an R1 single-family high-density zone, up to 15 units an acre. And then the development community would then be able to look at those standards and say, okay, with these standards and these amenities, I can make this project work. Otherwise, you're not going, also because the development community is trying to make an affordable project. Cost for homes in Clovis is getting way out of reach. We're over $430,000 a unit in Clovis now. That is well beyond entry level, well beyond. And so we're looking to try to find a way to build affordable units. Even the project that Wilson Homes on their elevation products, they're over $300,000 a home now. They started out at under $200,000.
Mike, are you talking cost for the builder, or are you talking cost for the buyer?
Sales cost.
Okay, thank you.
Just talking sales cost. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Land prices have increased. Material prices have gone out of sight. I believe in the last 3 months, 4 months, lumber has gone up $18,000 per home. So things are just escalating out of sight. And so we're looking for ways to alleviate that problem, to get the cost down, so that you have at least maybe some entry-level homes in Clovis and new homes. So this is the request of the industry, is to give direction to staff to come back and work with the industry on developing a high-density single-family zone for up to 15 units per acre. Right now, even the elevations product, I think, is around 12. And they have to go through this plan development process. So they're not guaranteed anything. They have to go through and negotiate. So they're taking a big risk and investing the amount of money there are. Now, obviously, they've had some experience with their particular product, so you're familiar with it. But if a new developer comes in, you're not familiar with them, who knows what's gonna happen? And that's the whole issue, is that you're curtailing the market in this particular size of development and density of development. In addition to these requests by the industry, you are facing, through state regulation, to develop higher density developments. When the state says they want high density through their program of the arena numbers, they're saying high density isn't 15 units an acre or 20 units an acre. It's 30 to 50 units an acre. And that, there's no place in Clovis, I don't recall any place in Clovis that's got 30 units an acre. At least not right now. Dave can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any place in Clovis that's got 30 units an acre. But that's what the state is pushing on you guys. Not just Clovis. Fresno, Reedley, Sanger, the whole state. And it's driving the industry crazy. Because they're up against, they come in with a high density project and across the state, and communities don't like it. Except when you're downtown San Francisco, they would love it. That's a low density project in San Francisco. But it's, other than the high density areas in Los Angeles, San Diego, Oakland, and the Bay Area, the rest of the Bay Area, 30 units an acre is unreal. And there is some work with the state trying to get them to understand what the Central Valley and more inland areas have to deal with when you're trying to put in 30 to 50 units an acre in an area. And so we're thinking that 15 units an acre is a reasonable for single family homes, at least as a high density project. Will you get them all over town? Not likely. But there are some places where they can make 15 units an acre work. And so we're just requesting some direction. You don't have, we're not asking you to approve these recommendations for the density or the amenities, but at least to direct the staff to say, okay, we're interested in seeing what you guys can come up with, and we'll move forward to see if we can achieve a process that provides certainty for the building community, so they know what they're looking at when they go in and buy a piece of land. They know what they can pay for it. They know what the density is going to be. They know what the requirements are going to be. They know what it's going to cost to build a home on it and put it on it, put the infrastructure in, so they have some certainty as to what they can sell that house for and what they have to sell it for to make a profit. Otherwise, there's no reason to move ahead for the project. So that's all we're requesting tonight, is to kick it back to staff, let the staff work with the industry to define what these standards are and what the amenities that are going to be commensurate with those standards. That's all. Any questions?
So two things. So the price of home, you know, we often hear as council members, well, we'll just go to Madera. We're just going to build at Riverstone, where those prices are exactly the same as the ones you just described. So correct. That's a little, I don't quite track it's not any more affordable in Madera, and the schools aren't as good. So it's kind of, I'm not sure I buy that trade-off, but that's troubling. I guess I do want to know, though, I mean, the building industry in Clovis have had a fabulous relationship over all the years. I want to understand how, in like true spirit of let's build a great community, how this is sorry to harp on amenities, how this is the list. I guess for me, I understand objective standards. I think there could be a higher density zone district. Those things don't bother me, but I guess I need the BIA to tell me, after all we've been through, like my mother, after all I've done for you, no, I'm just kidding, after all we've been through as a child, how this is the list. It's kind of offensive, Mike. A trash can and a bench is an amenity. to have a house on 1,800 square feet of property. I cannot reconcile that. Again, you want to do all 5 of those as amenities and then one more on top of that? But, I mean, I guess I just want to say from my heart, I'm offended at the list. There's nothing amenity-like about a bench and a trash can. So I am struggling a lot to see, we can talk about the zone district, but you've gotta create a place, builders have done it in Clovis for 40 years that make Clovis a great community. This is not that, and I just don't understand the list.
Well, we just came up with some ideas and said, okay,
I know, but you heard us say that last time, and trash cans are still on the list. So you came up with the same list you had last time. You don't have anything interesting. A charging station for your scooter, or, I don't know, something more interesting, but I am offended, respectfully, that's what you're gonna start as your new, you want like the best case scenario on the lot size for the builders, and the worst case scenario for the city on the amenity side. And that, I just don't feel like is fair, nor the position that the BIA has taken with the city. And I might be wrong and overly emotional about a trash can, but I just can't get there, so.
I can understand that.
I know. Okay, thank you, I'm done. I just like my mother. Oh, God rest her soul.
So, everything that Lynn just said, you cannot be taken seriously when you come at us with this. And so it feels as though this is a low ball, kind of high ball game that we do not play in the city of Clovis. If you want to be serious, the BIA I'm sorry for personalizing it, but if the BIA wants to be serious about going to compact, then they need to be coming up to the table with something significant. So, for example, Vong and Lynn, when they were walking precincts, you've heard them say how we have taken some risk in allowing some of these high-density projects to come into the city of Clovis. And what do we get as a return for that risk? But projects that 3 to 5 years out are not holding their value. I mean, they probably are in today's market, but they don't look good. And that is not what we signed up for when we, to a certain degree, partnered with the BIA in saying, hey, okay, we're willing to go for higher density in some of these unique situations. So there is absolutely, for me personally, there's absolutely no way that I have confidence in coming up with objective standards with the BIA if you're coming in like this. It has PDP written on it for the next decade or longer, because you've lost some trust as a result of coming forward with this particular type of proposal from my perspective. The question that needs to be asked and answered is, why is it some of these higher density projects that we have taken some risk in approving have gone to pot? And if we can answer that question, why that is happening, then perhaps maybe we can have a conversation related to what went wrong, or how can we make sure that it is maintained well so that it doesn't deteriorate over time. Those are the types of conversations I think that we need to have going forward if the BIA is going to be taken seriously. So those are my views, and as far as this conversation is concerned, it's a conversation that is over for tonight. And until you guys get seriously about asking those tough questions about how is it that these higher density projects can maintain the quality that we come to expect in the city of Clovis, it's a conversation, in my view, we shouldn't be engaging in, because it seems rather disingenuous coming from the BIA.
I have a question for staff. Mike brings up RENA. That new district zone they're proposing, does that even impact our RENA numbers, that density?
Not specifically. So the RENA numbers that we will be most concerned with and are concerned with now are low and very low income category. currently that requirement is 20 units an acre. In the next general plan, housing element cycle, it'll be 30 units an acre.
So say that the BIA is magnanimous in trying to get this type of very low affordable housing, it won't even impact our arena numbers at all.
I would almost say it'll have no effect. It is certainly not the most critical category. We still...
It's not the categories we need.
Correct.
And have needed in the low affordable and very low affordable.
Yes.
Categories. So we need the medium affordability too, and that's where that range would be.
But likely, at least some of those units would fall into the moderate category, which we do need to include, but it has not been our friction point.
And like Lynn and Bob said, they can't be instant ghettos. I mean, I hate to call it a place where you don't want to live after 3 years. Or investment properties from someone out of this region. You know, we don't want that. We want that to be a place where there's homeowners that are local and want to live there, and not some rental.
Thank you, Mike, for coming before us. I'm trying to understand why the PDP process does not allow, even if it's this that you're proposing, to go. So all I heard was it takes too long, right? It'd be 6 months more. And then my question to that is, even if it took 6 months more, how many projects in which the BIA went through the PDP process folded, did not sell? You know, you took too long. Look at all the vacant homes, you know. I want to know how many, because if that's the reality, then yes, let's change, let's make the process more streamlined. But everything that has been brought up, and what I'm understanding of the market right now, people are bidding to get a new home. And so I'm trying to understand, regardless of the product, is the process one in which developers are saying, oh, that's 6 months, forget it. I don't ever want to do that. I want something more streamlined. So is that time a real concern with BIA?
Well, the builders who worked through this process have indicated that they need when they're going to try to do this kind of a project, if they even want to do this kind of project, they got to have some certainty as to what it's going to cost them. And with a variable process, they have no control over that. And if they're proposing a high-density, single-family project through the PDP process, they have to gamble with the cost of the architectural development of a home that'll fit on that lot. And they can't just offer one style. They've got to offer multiple models, so they have to design 4 or 5 different models, and architects don't come cheap, because I'm sure you know when you design that fire station. So they're investing a lot of money just on the chance that they might be able to fit these particular homes on the lots that you ultimately approve through this variable standard process. So they're looking for certainty. Now, so I think that's the main thing, is they're looking for more certainty in terms of what they can expect out of this process, rather than have to go through and negotiate with the staff, go through the planning commission, negotiate with the planning commission, and then go to the city council and complete the negotiating process, which adds a lot of time. So I think the industry is looking at, is there some way we can modify this process? Because your PDP process doesn't even allow for, I understand, doesn't even allow for 15 units an acre on single family. And that's what we're looking for, is for single family, not multifamily or R2, looking for single family.
I guess to piggyback on what you said about certainty, I think it would help the commission, the staff, and us if your membership already has these products, have communities like this, in which we can see, because you want us to develop the standards before they even look at it, but I'm looking at the builders, and I go, where are they building this, and where, man, we want to bring it to Clovis, but we need more certainty before we bring it. Come look at Bakersfield, look what we built there. And I'm trying to say, if it's already there, this is what it is. This is what will fit, because it feels like 1,800 square foot elevations is not going to fit, if that's, the smallest. So there has to be a product in which we can look at and go, okay, if we are doing this, that's Clovis, that'll fit, that style. And I think we need that, so that way we can actually see, and I don't know if it's our staff, the BIA, to bring some sort of visualization of these type of communities so we can really understand it. Because I agree with you that if this is needed, then standards are better, so that way there is certainty. But we also need certainty in seeing what the product is that will fit this community.
Yeah, there's all this information is coming from the builders who have done these kinds of projects in some city somewhere. So they didn't think about maybe providing examples. What they wanted to do was get direction from the council to direct staff, say, okay, let's take a look at this, go back and work with the industry, come back with something that we think that we might be able to live with, and have it work for the city.
And just maybe staff or Mike, and so if they did, and so they, if they had some, they couldn't do that and bring it to us through the PDP process, and then it comes to us, we can look at it. Is that not allowed? Because that's what I'm hearing from the industry, but, I see you, Renee, shaking your head like it's okay. It is allowed. So I'm trying to see why our process currently can't allow for what the industry wants. Other than the 6 months, I haven't heard anything else. And so are you saying that we allow it if they brought this product in which they can speak with you and you can share with us how it looks like?
Well, I think that's just it. That's the process right now. When a developer comes in and they want to build a higher density product, single family, we don't have that zone district, so they have to go through the PDP process. They identify all the development standards they are requesting and then commensurate with what they want. We are looking for amenities to augment that project, the area around there. That process requires some time and, as Mike indicated, some back and forth, because the staff is really looking at what is the best product, amenity for that development. I don't want to speak for you, Mike, but what Mike is representing from the industry is they kind of want to get away from that back and forth, and instead they would like to have these compact development standards developed, where they then come in with their product, they meet these standards, and then they process their tentative map. There is no back and forth. There is no amenity other than what may have been approved on the front end, which right now they're saying they have this table as a starting point. That would be, the standard. So I think, to get back to your question, there is a process in place, and it's been working for a very long time. I was talking to Dave while the presentation was going on. I don't know that we've ever denied a PDP. I mean, we've come to council with applications with amenities. There may have been some adjustments to those amenities, but I believe for the most part, shy of the Baron Osmond, which was a multifamily, we have not denied one. So those projects have come through. Now, they've changed over time. Again, it started as a planned unit development, a PUD, then a PRD, planned residential development, to a PDP. But again, those are all after the same thing, an exception to the development standards for, that existing R1, R2, R1MD, if they couldn't meet that standard. So, again, I think where staff is.
I would be interested in seeing one go through with actually what is proposed. And if that is the market, they will bring something. And if that is the market, 6 months is not going to make it where the project will not sell. That's That's my belief. I have not seen anything that has been delayed in our city in which a 6-month delay makes it where, other than a market crash, you know, 6 months delay in staff vetting this out and going through our planning commission and the council in which a project would not go through, so.
Mike, do you want to say anything before I say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay, we want to interrupt you. You talked about assurance and certainty for the developer, that's very important because they're the one putting the money out there. They certainly can't go upside down and go out of business. That's not in their best interest, certainly not in the best interest of the city. But we also need assurance and certainty what this product is going to look like 15 years, 20 years down the road. And I'm with Vong on, I'm a visual person. I mean, Lynn asked me, how big is this? And I'm off my feet, probably. And so if the industry wants to come with a 15 units per acre, then I need to see that. I need to go physically kick the tires and see what it looks like. So I'm not averse to the conversation. But I'm certainly not ready to buy that car until I've kicked the tires. And so I think we're going to have a little bit more conversation about it. At least that's just my opinion.
Look, that's the whole issue, is that right now, there is no discussion on it. It's this way or the highway. There's no standard. You got to negotiate whatever you want. There is no standard. There is no certainty going forward. If you want to take that risk, that's the process you got to use.
But Mike, what I'm hearing from the council is, show us an example. We're giving it back to the industry. Give us those neighborhoods where what you're proposing is working, where it's been there for 3-4 years, and it's a viable, vibrant community, where those issues that Long and Lynn encountered while walking precincts don't exist in a city comparable to ours. So we can go visit, so we can kick the tires, like Drew says, and see that it is a viable alternative. Because until we see that, we're not believing it. Not for a trash can or a park bench, you know. So that's what we're asking. It's the ball's on your court now.
Okay, that's understandable, and I don't have a problem with that, of going back if that's what you're interested in, to get more information, to actually look at what this product would be on the ground, and it's already developed somewhere. We can, identify those places, and you can go take a look at them, or we can have pictures taken. The developers can take pictures of these projects that they've done and what they look like now. So, yeah, I'll be perfectly glad to kick this back to my builder committee, and we'll work on it and send the information back through Renee and Dave.
Because a lot of these projects we allowed were like pilot programs. They were all pilot programs, and we're not too enthusiastic about the results in our own community. So show us, So show us where they have worked and why they're working. Maybe we find where we made mistakes here locally, and so we don't commit those same mistakes. And then maybe we can approve. But until that homework is done, it's not time for us to invest time with our staff to do what I think should be the industry's job.
Okay, that's fine. We'll kick it back to the industry, but at least now I've got some idea that, you're willing to look at it. 6 months ago, you weren't able to look at it at all. And a year ago, when this change came through for the medium density, you didn't want to look at it at all. So the staff took that message and say, hey, we don't want to change anything. We don't want to look at anything. This is it, period.
But I think the message is still, we don't want to change anything.
I understand that, but at least you're willing to look at these projects, where they are, what they look like now, what they look like new, what they look like now, and then at least say, okay, or no, we're not going to do it. We just need some, we've asked the industry, asked the city to consider this kind of a project. And so that's what we're looking for, is guidance from the council as to what you want, what you're willing to look at. And if you're willing to look at it, we'll go gather the information. Now, maybe we screwed up by not bringing more information forward. But our intent was just to kind of get direction, to send it back to staff, so that, because staff kind of knows what the council wants. So that's what we were thinking, that staff would be able to sit down with the industry and work through these issues, the issues that you just described, and come up with a solution that would work for the industry and for the city.
Anyone else have comments or questions for Mike? Anything else, Mike?
No, that's it. I've got my direction, so we'll see what we can come up with, and hopefully in a month or so, we'll have some information back to the staff that they can forward on to you, and you can give them their feedback, your feedback as well as, you know, no, we don't like this, and we're still no. So at least we can understand that, and it's no harm, no foul, you know.
Thank you, Mike.
I was going to say, if you come back, it's not...
We'll have 2 garbage cans, okay?
One with my picture on it,
okay.
and then a fence with my other picture.
And you want a place for your campaign?
Yeah, that's great, yeah. 20 years doing this, those are my 2 legacies, a trash can and a fence. That's so sad. But seriously, thank you.
Yeah, in retrospect, that was not a good idea.
The trash can or what?
Trash can was not a good idea.
No. So I guess I would say when you come back, don't just bring us a picture of what it looks like. I'm looking for and I don't mean investment in a money sense. I want to know what it did to the larger community. Because if we're going to put people in 1,800 square foot lots, they got to have something to do besides reach out their kitchen window and touch their neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And over the long term. So,
yeah.
because
So you want something that's been in place for 3 to 5 years.
You brought this as a package. We want this, we're going to give you this. So you come back with we saw this and this is what happened in other communities. Now, maybe this is really generous and we think that's, you know, in some Temecula, that's a great thing, so that we can make that judgment. But because you've got this on the table, and I mean, with great respect, I agree with Bob, this is pretty, you want the lowest you can get and the least you can give, and that does not feel very good. And that is really not the relationship we've had with the industry over the years. So I think that's at least what I'm reacting to. You can't have it both ways. You got to help us out in some way to make this a place you want to keep building houses 30 years from now. It won't help us if we build yucky neighborhoods that in 6 months they look like crap and nobody wants to live there. That's not helpful to anybody. So you get my point. But yeah, I feel strongly trash can, name on it. Perfect. Thank you.
And Mike, in the event that you identify a 15-unit per acre project that's not within a reasonable driving distance, in other words, suburbs in the Central Valley, when you give us pictures, I'm going to want to see nighttime pictures of parking and things like that, because that's one of the issues that I noticed when I was walking precincts, was the cars parked all over the place and very difficult to get in and out. I've talked to some of the firefighters, the engineers were concerned about the width because of parked cars and things like that. So that's one of the things that I would look at. So if you could throw that at us too, I would appreciate it.
Sure. I know what you guys are looking for, and with the extra vehicles in the street, you won't have to worry about those, because VMT will eliminate all those, because people are going to start taking the transit bus.
Yeah, and everybody's going to get vaccinated.
Only a measure CPAP is looking really positive. I just don't know about it.
And just a note on the VMT issue, that is critical to be solved, because the reason you don't have a lot of projects coming forward is because of the VMT issue, and they have no idea on what it's going to cost to mitigate anything that's above the 13 vehicle miles traveled, because nobody knows. They've got some proposals out there. The Office of Planning and Research has listed a whole bunch of things you can provide that will provide mitigation, and an estimate of what it might, in terms of count against or count for mitigation, but there's no calculation as to what that's going to cost. And County of San Diego went through this process about a year ago, and they came up with some astronomical numbers. And the least expensive was $40,000 a unit, up to $1 million a unit, depending on what that project was. And they didn't approve it. They've kicked it back. Yes?
That was just for a mitigation fee?
That's just a mitigation fee.
Wow.
Of course, they didn't adopt it because it was outrageous, so they kicked it back to staff, and the staff is trying to work through it. But those are the numbers they came up with, and it was crazy.
So, Mike, so you are saying that that issue is slowing down development?
Excuse me?
You are saying that that issue is slowing down development?
Yeah, because you're not building anything new off of those, since you have not had a project, and I'll defer to staff, but I don't think you've had a project approved since July 1 of 2020 that would have to be subject to VMT and mitigate VMT. Is that correct?
I'll jump in. So there is criteria where projects can screen out. You're under a certain number of trips, it's affordable, under so many, I think, units. So we have had a few projects that have come through.
But they're not subject to the VMT. They're exempted from
screened out.
They're screened out, and that's 50 units or less. And you don't have a lot of projects, at least my builders are not building on 10 acres. They're building on 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. That's what the production builders. And so you haven't seen any of the production builders bring any new projects subject to the new rules. You're building off of approved tentative maps that were approved prior to July of 20. They're all working through those lots right now. And when they're gone, that's going to be the tail. And the problem is, we're now, almost 2 years into this process, and it's not going to be easy to catch up. Even if you get we've solved this problem, you've got a 2-year lag in being able to get a project approved, which will take, what's the normal process, 6 to 8 months for a tentative map? So even if we get it solved by July, you're talking into 23 before you can start a new project. That's assuming you can solve the problem and solve the issue of mitigation and have that not break the bank, because we know right now that even a fee is going to be high, but the alternative is worse because you don't know what it's going to cost. I mean, they've calculated, even as, they threw out a wild idea about providing in perpetuity a fund to pay for transit services for your subdivision at so much a unit, so that person can walk down the block, hopefully, or, a quarter mile or half a mile away, because the distance is a half a mile between a rapid transit stop or an established transit corridor. And Clovis doesn't have many of those. Not like Fresno. I mean, and Fresno's only got 2. They've got the main corridor, Blackstone and Ventura. Those are their main 2 high-density corridors. So, everybody's trying to figure this out, and it's really a challenge to the builders and the cities, and the industry is trying to get relief through the legislature to lessen, especially in the Central Valley, where this whole area is not designed for high-density residential like San Francisco, LA, and San Diego. And it's just is not going to work here. I mean, it's just not. But they don't seem to believe it, and that's the difficulty we've got.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. So I just wanted to add a little bit. Thank you, Mike. Mike brings up a lot of good points, and he's correct. There have been very few projects that have come through that haven't screened out. As Young's here tonight, they have some projects, the developer, Gary McDonald, has come forward with some projects that we have approved. We also have a current inventory of tentative or recorded maps that I believe were between single and multifamily, just over 2,000 units. We also have in entitlement multiple thousands of units. I mentioned tonight the Home Place project, and then we've got the Heritage Grove up, that development project. So we're 4,000 plus units. Now, of course, that's going to develop over many, many years. They wouldn't come in 1 year. I mean, historically, our average was 800. I mean, even in a high year, we're just over 1,000. So we are mindful of what our current inventory is, but we also have projects in the pipeline. We've also got some other larger projects like the Spenceley project. There's another development, Beheimer in Clovis Avenue. It's close to 600 units that is required to do an environmental impact report. Well, I say required, it's going through the screening process. It'll likely, just from the size of the project and the impacts, require that kind of study. So there are many projects in the works, and I just wanted to make sure that that information was conveyed.
Okay, anyone else in the public wishing to comment on this report? What's that? Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, I'll close it to the public and bring it back to the Plan Commission and the Council. Any further discussion among us? Paul, you wanted to say something?
Yes. A lot of the stuff I've heard tonight is being addressed all across this country. And there's some real problems. One thing that we may want to think about getting more involved in, or how can we control this and stuff, HOAs, the builders have started to do this now, and some cities are starting to make this part of their regulation stuff, is that if you have a single car garage, there has to be space for one car to park in that garage. If you have a two-car garage, there has to be space for one car to park in that garage. So there's always got to be a space in those garages to park to get a car off the street. And some HOAs have it now is that if you have a two-car garage, you can't park a car on the street until you've filled the parking spaces that your house has been built for. So this is something, I don't know how you'll handle this, but it's something that is happening, that I see in information that I get put in front of me from all over the United States, that these problems. HOAs, of course, it's easy for them to step in and do it. They can just, boom, this is what you got to do. Some cities are slowly now starting to process this on it, and it's ways to control vehicles and vehicles parking on streets and overcrowded streets. You brought it up tonight. Too many cars on the streets and stuff. Yeah, you open the garage doors and they can't get them in the garages. So this is something that City of Clovis might want to investigate, look into, and see is there some way we can get involved so that we can also initiate this and take some of the pressures off of the other amenities and services and stuff that are there for the people in Clovis, and make Clovis a better place to live. All I had to say.
Anyone else?
Jose, I just wanted to, I think that what was lost in the last discussion is solutions to help build what we need most. And so I don't want it to sound like the council is opposed to that, because this council has always approved every project that has come before us, multifamily, whatever it is. And so I think that what we want is just to be able to see how to best move in that direction to relieve those, low, very low categories in the city. And I think that's staff's understanding of us as well. And so I just wanted to assure that that's what we want, because like Mayor has always said, everyone is welcome here, you know, and so we just want what is best for them when they are here as well. So I just wanted to say that because I think that was lost in why BIA was bringing that forward. I think somehow we were talking too much about the details and that was just lost.
If there's no further comment on that, we'll move on. That was a receive and file, and we'll move on to city manager's comments. John?
Just to add, I want to thank the Planning Commission for being here tonight and all the work that you do. Renee, at the beginning of this, indicated that we hadn't gotten together for 3 years. I want to try and at least get together once a year. We had a unique circumstance with the pandemic, but it'd be good if we can get together as a body at least once a year.
Okay, council and commission comments, so where do we start? We'll start with Amy. Any comments?
No, I mean, I think it was very enlightening. I find it hard to imagine to create standards when we're not currently building. To me, it's like if we've been building that particular type of development, then we would come up with a standard. It's almost a cart before the horse. In my mind, that's how I view it. But I think it was very enlightening. I learned a lot, but I do think that we do need to get together more frequently because we kind of tend to know what you're looking for and what kind of standards, and you kind of know historically what we look for, but it's good to have that face-to-face and communication.
All right. Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with Dave and Renee and provide some input on these topics and create this joint meeting for us to hear. I think it was very enlightening. The last discussion was certainly rich. I heard a lot of folks say, what is Clovis? I think that's important for us to keep defining that. And as you said, Vong, everyone's welcome here. But I do think that there's some value in some of the subjectivity. You know, we were able to try some things. One of my favorite sayings is we get smarter as we go, right? So if we did something, it didn't work, let's not keep doing that. So I think we need more inputs before we can kind of drive that over the goal line. But I appreciate the dialogue tonight and being here to listen. It helps us, I think, as a commission to just level set going forward. So thank you.
I'll just reiterate what they said, but definitely thank you for this opportunity because it allows us to hear what the council has to say about certain projects, especially setting up specific codes, because I know we've done a lot in the last couple of years where we do a lot of exceptions. And I hear Mr. Pedini, and I think that possibly something where affordability is allowed for retirees, for young couples, you know, right out of college, because they really are, at this point, priced out of living in Clovis, and we have a beautiful city. I love it here, and we should be able to, as Vaughn said, welcome everyone. So obviously there's merit to what they're saying, and I look forward to hearing or seeing the projects that look like what they're proposing. Possibly a community garden maybe as an amenity, not a garbage can, you know, something different like that would enrich our community. We want to build smaller communities within our larger community, and somebody who you know, to know each other and know our neighbors and invite our neighbors to know each other, and those type of amenities that will enrich that, right, in a community. So for me, it was, I definitely would like to meet more often because it's just such a benefit to hear what you all have to say, and it was a great opportunity to be here, so thank you.
I particularly enjoyed being here this evening. I like more frequent joint meetings only because it reinforces my tentativeness when I sat up there as a commissioner to know that we're all speaking with pretty much one voice, and that's what I heard tonight. We have a commission and a council, and we're all speaking with one voice. I didn't chime in with the Building Industry Association because you've all very eloquently put it the way I would have been perhaps not as diplomatic, but, but I do appreciate it. We have a great team. We have a wonderful staff, very professional, very proud to be a part of it, and proud to be a part of this city. Thank you.
I'm very excited that we got together this evening. It's been a while, and this gives us, at least for me as a commissioner, an opportunity to see what direction we, meaning all of us in Clovis, want Clovis to go and be. And it's not one individual that's out there forcing things. This is something we all want. We all want to be in the same canoe, paddling in the same direction. So even if we meet twice a year, would even be better. But once a year at least, minimum. Again, from when I was at the academy and talking to people, they all look forward to meeting with their council and able to see what they're thinking and what they want and their vision and stuff. So thank you very much for getting us back together, and let's make it a yearly event.
I've just been impressed with staff. There is a lot, it feels like, there is a lot going on in the city of Clovis that you hit those particular areas. Frankly, those were areas I hadn't been paying close attention to. I mean, I'm thinking about Landmark going up and some of the issues associated with Landmark as we move forward, and the overall general challenges with trying to figure out how we get affordable homes in the city of Clovis. I mean, truly affordable, not affordable on density, but affordable for people who are the retirees to come in. What can we do in order to make that happen? And I don't know, it feels a little bit like a broken record. We keep trying to communicate to the state of California the demands you are placing for affordable housing. Great, we'd like to be able to embrace those, and then we get out of the other side of their mouth, these are the regulations that we are putting in place, which then make that affordability unaffordable. So at some point, something's going to have to give. I don't know what that is that's going to have to give, but they just keep trying to, it feels to me like they're just continuing to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. And maybe at some point they'll figure out that their consistent demands are not practical. And I think that maybe they'll figure that out when it's like homes aren't being built. It's not that complicated to figure out supply and demand. You learn it in Econ 1A. And so you need to increase the supply. Well, how are you going to increase the supply? Well, you have to make it a little bit more, possible for communities to allow for development in their home or in their communities. And it just does not seem to be practical. I mean, there was another development that was affordable housing that came online on the city of Fresno, and it was like $500,000 just that was the cost. That wasn't how much a person would have to pay. That was the cost to develop the place. So it is, I don't know, I feel like, I'm preaching to the choir, but to a certain degree, maybe at some point, if enough of us resonate that, what you are requiring of us, Sacramento, is just not workable, and we've tried to work with it for several years now. Maybe there'll be some movement on the policy side on their end to figure out how to back off so that we can do what it is that we believe is, the appropriate direction for the city of Clovis without all of these crazy demands that the state of California places on us. So anyway, I feel like you guys didn't get to talk enough. And I'm sorry for hogging the microphone once again. but we love seeing you. You guys are doing great work and appreciate the sacrifices that you're making, not just you, but your families, in order to, sit on the planning commission.
Yeah, I personally want to thank all our planning commissioners for the work that you do. One thank you is, you know, during COVID, we set the policy if you should meet or not, and you just had to abide by it. And regardless of which side you were on, you had to meet because we decided you got to meet. And so, thank you for that. And I know I never reached out to see what you were thinking because you were holding public meetings too, you know. And if our decision was against it, I apologize now. But thank you for that. You hear so much more of these land use issues than we do now because of what the laws have changed. And because of that, you are the face of government that our residents see, especially with land use. And thank you for doing such an excellent job in trying to read and feel. But I think the relationship is one in which you have been empowered to really represent what you feel and your experiences. And I think we trust you with that. And we will always respect, and whether we agree or not, that's different, but we will always respect the decisions that you have made if and when it comes to us. So thank you for the service. These meetings, I think, as Paul and you guys have said, you know, allows us to hear what you guys have been struggling with, because you hear a lot more of these applications, and hopefully this also will, like Bob said, allow us to also rethink and see what's been going on greater detail. So thank you for that. Thank you, staff, for always an excellent job in representing the items to us, but also just to the citizens. And lastly, I guess this is when we report council stuff too, so better, because we had a Measure C meeting last week, and so, yeah. That was not what happened at the meeting. No, you know, I appreciate Lynn taking a moment to allow the members to recognize and honor Mayor Cardenas. I know we did it here, but I think he was a big pillar in leading that committee. And thank you for that, Lynn. And I just thought, you know, you did an excellent job moving and asking people to participate, and that allowed more conversation to occur. We went over the programs and sub-programs, and I think it was very healthy. And so this next meeting, the staff will bring back, hopefully, getting everybody's comments together, and hopefully we can move forward with that decision. And then lastly with Measure C, thank you, Chad, for those videos, just to try to engage our members, at least through social media, to have comment on Measure C as we move forward. And I think I'd be remiss if I don't recognize our staff for those working in the working group, that you guys have been very engaged and knowing the details, because even though I sit on the executive committee representing the city, a lot of those details you know, and you help educate, you know, us as a council and me as a representative of the city to move forward in knowing what is best for Clovis, at the same time as being cognizant that it is a regional initiative and how we can be a good player in that. So thank you for being involved and keeping us afloat on that. That's all I have. Thanks.
I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. What the Planning Commission does is very important, because one of the main things that successful cities do is they plan in advance, because when you plan poorly, it affects your quality of life, public safety, your infrastructure, and you're going to end up playing catch-up for years, or you may not ever catch up, and your city becomes untenable, is probably a good word for it. One of the things that we look at, the big high-level issues going in areas that are dirt now. But we also, as a city, deal with redevelopment things that are happening when people buy and sell. And one of the things that has come to me, from several people, is a frustration, and it's not with the planning commission, I think it's with us as a city. I've had two people downtown who, were building, they're gonna do some building, and they're being told you gotta tear up your concrete and put in stamped concrete, which frankly makes it financially unfeasible for some of the projects. And that's something I probably want to have a conversation with staff, or maybe that's something as a group we ask that question, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to tear up 100 feet of sidewalk, stamp it, and then have 100 feet on each direction the same as it was before. To me, it makes a tripping hazard. But that's the kind of minutia that we get involved in, and it's important to businesses who want to do business here that we're predictable, we're reasonable, and I think we're all those things. And sometimes you have to explain to people why you have to do this. And sometimes at some points I have a little difficulty. So this is a learning process for me too. I mean, every day you're like, okay, I didn't see that one coming, because we're looking at the higher level. But we appreciate, and I appreciate what you guys do. And we do definitely need to see your faces more often. And staff, you're always you're in the trenches on these items. And I know that sometimes it's a thankless task, because you're getting grief from the development community. You're getting grief from the community over something, and then you have to deal with us. And sometimes you have to educate us, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, yes, to all the things that they said. I have a particular fondness for the Planning Commission, so thanks for your work. It's nice to see, Brendan. I'm always reminded when you were 5 years old riding the bike on Laverne, and now you're like 3 years older since the last time I said you were 5. And now you're like 3 years plus whatever. It's been a long time ago. Oh, anyway, so it's funny part of why I love living in Clovis. So thank you for what you do. It is, I know you do it for the money. Try not to spend the $35 all in place, okay? Please. I have two topics for future meetings. So one is the sphere. I'd like to talk about the sphere at some point. Maybe I can't wait till the next meeting, but I want to talk about the sphere. And the second thing is it's a little bit related to what we've talked about. On the one hand is all this new building, but I think it would be interesting to talk about the historical preservation of our city. I think we might be at a place where we need a subcommittee of the Tourism Advisory Committee. Maybe it needs a Planning Commission representative. But I think that part of why we are Clovis is we build really awesome things and we hold on to what we had. And I say that, and Andy knows where I'm going with this, but I think we could also use an update on the Carnegie Library status. It's building momentum in our community. There's a parade in the float called Save Our Library. So I got an email today about a petition to save the library. So there's lots of energy around the Carnegie Library building, but broadly, I think, how do we hold on to the history that's Clovis, whether it's a building, whether it's a trail marker that says, hey, this used to be a something, but it's sort of the counterbalance of all the new development and 1,800 square feet lots and all the rest. So I think it's maybe time as a city that we think a little bit about that, and that would be a really interesting conversation for the Planning Commission, because we're all trying to hold on to what makes us Clovis and grow at the same time, and understanding that history is part of what makes us Clovis. So I just would offer that as a topic potentially for a future meeting. But thank you for your service. Thank you for not being 5 years old anymore. That means I might not be 5 either, but that's all right.
Thank you for your service as well. I think all of us here on this table, and staff, everyone here, I think we're all staff now. We have a guest. We have two. And the public too, the people who live here. You've enticed everybody to be here in Clovis because of the good work that we've done here in there's longevity in this table, and that's good. That's good for Clovis. And so you'll get there. 5 years is all right. 5 more years. and that's good. There's continuity, and we get to know each other and know that we are very different. This is a organically diverse group, and yet, like Mike said, we kind of think alike, and we're in the same canoe, as Paul says, and trying to do the right thing for our city. And the good thing is that we have great staff that's also on that same page, using all the metaphors.
I know you got them all.
I got canoes, and we can kick the tires, and then.
If you could get the word paradigm in, it'd be perfect.
How about 2 nickels? No, that's four nickels. There won't be a paradigm, there'll be 4 nickels. Anyways. But that's what makes Clovis what it is. But you know, we build beautifully too. And I think that's what staff wants, and that's what we want, especially with these higher densities. And that discretion has been taken from us. And now we have to deal with that. And how do we deal with that and still keep our city as beautiful as we have known it all our lives? It's becoming more and more difficult, but we'll get there. We'll make sure that the people that live beyond our borders understand who we are and what we want. We don't want to exclude people. We just want everybody that lives within our city have the same experience, regardless of their state in life. If they're young, old, poor, or not. You know, we talk about the market rate. So some people cannot afford to come here. We have to fix that. And Sacramento isn't doing that. And so it's up to us to find solutions for that. And I think we can do it. And I want us to be more often, at least once a year, because we also like to hear what you have to say and your thoughts, and you keep us honest. I really do believe that. When you bash us about the trash cans and stuff. So you do keep us honest. So thank you for your service. Thank you, staff, for all you do, because we're building together the Clovis that is and will be, and I think we make our past, what are we, Clovisians or Clovisites, proud. Pioneers. But we make those that came before us proud, because we stand on their shoulders, but we continue their tradition. So we'll keep on going and keep meeting and keep doing it. So thank you for being here.
Can I just say one more?
I just have one more COG. I did go to a COG meeting, so I have to report out too. And we did also honor our chairperson, who was Mayor Cardenas. It was a tribute, like you said, that it was the closest you've ever been to a presidential funeral, and that's how he was treated at COG. So I don't remember much more of COG because it was mostly a tribute to Dave. So he's a great guy. So.
Just say one more fast thing. I'm sorry. I forgot. I want to give compliments to Vaughn, who represents our city really well on Measure C, and you are the best prepared, which won't surprise any of us. And when you say, on page 47 of the document, I'm like,
Paragraph 5.
But I do want to say that you represent the city really well, and if everyone could be as prepared as you, we would not be, we'd be a little farther along. So I just want to thank you for your support of me, and thank you for representing the city well and checking in with staff. But by far the most engaged, prepared member on the steering committee. So thank you for that. Appreciate that.
And we're adjourned.
Oh, no, we don't.